You get 2 runs off the first ball, you hit the next for a 4, and the third ball, it's a 6. But how do you top that? Welcome to the in-depth review of the Ather Rizta. This is a family scooter and they can be kind of dull. But this is an Ather and they are usually kinda exciting. Wow. But first, let's free up those who are not ready to sit down and watch an electric family scooter review. I think the Ather Rizta makes a very decent purchase. It's spacious, it's going to be quite comfortable, and I think you and the members of your family will enjoy both riding it and owning it. There are flaws. What we'd recommend you look at is not this, the top X with the 3.7 kilowatt hour battery, but the bottom S model. It's extremely cost effective. And yes, the Rizda does have a few flaws. The design from the rear especially, I don't think everyone's going to like it. And the suspension, it is an improvement over the 450X, but I wonder if it's enough of an improvement. I think we need to set two contexts for this story. First, the family scooter as we know it today is a template the Activa set years ago, and honestly, since then, innovation, it's been really thin on the ground. Today, we recommend a lot of Axis 125s and Jupiters as the best family scooters, and in the electric world, maybe the iQ, which is an electric Jupiter. It's unassuming, it's quiet, and it blends in. You almost miss one going by. And that blending in is something that Athers just cannot do. Look at the 450X today. Is that design up to date? Oh, heck no. But it's still striking and unique. Their performance, feel, appeal, features, and price define and give the Athers a very specific feel. I'm not sure all of these translate easily to family scooters. So does that mean Athers Rizta is in trouble? On the design front, somewhat. Quality and finish levels are good, but there are a couple of flimsy bits that need a second look. The seat hinge, it's a little bit wobbly, and these mirrors, they feel much cheaper than what we are used to from this company. Now, from the front, the Rizta looks handsome and substantial, a trick that the 450s have still yet to figure out. But when you walk to the other end of the scooter, oh boy, that taper in the bodywork from the tail light downwards, I'm not convinced that was a good idea. It makes the Ather look pinched, almost meek, and I'm not convinced. Thankfully, that doesn't cause any functional issues because under the plastic is the same frame as the 450 and Athers work to create a lot more space than the 450s have. I'm sure you've seen a retired wrestler thumping on about the great seat and a Bollywood personality talking about how much shopping she fit under that seat. The space is more impressive than both the promos. And look, Ather didn't pay to park a Rizta at the bottom of a foreign swimming pool. Where were we? Ah yes, space, the final frontier. There is more than enough for rider and pillion both. And this is Ather's best seat yet, and I'm still going to say 2 steps short of being done. Taller riders, you're still going to be sliding forward in the seat. It is a lot less than before, and in that sense, it is an improvement, but it's still there. The floorboard is generous, as is the space under the seat. I only wish that the walls of that cubbyhole were a little bit more flat-sided, a la Ola, but as long as you leave the charger at home, there's no lack of space. What I also think is you should definitely get the 1500 rupee under-seat organizer bag thingy. To me, it should just have been standard. And the accessory you should just not waste any time or money on, of course, is the Ather connected helmet. Neither the safety certification nor the price makes sense. So on the comfort front, there's no lack of space, but there is the matter of the suspension. It is better than the 450, only by a bit. Riding solo, there is noticeably more comfort, but hit a broken patch and you are still going to get bounced around. 2 up, the experience is more comfortable and controlled, but that means there are ICE and electric rivals that have found better suspension choices. That I was not expecting. On the motor and battery front, there is a lack of surprises. And that's a good thing. right? This is the same motor and the same two battery packs that we know from the 450. This time, Ather's extracting less performance to extend your range. So acceleration, slower, top speed, lower. You have just two riding modes, one if you live in a hilly place, and you'll see roughly 10 kilometers more range from the corresponding 450 battery packs. And the Rizta does feel different, and I thoroughly enjoyed how smooth these Athers have now become. The top mode is called Zip, and it's got enough zip to make the city feel light and easy without the sizzle and panache of the warp or sport modes. Ather says you'll see between 80 and 105 kilometers of real world range, depending on the variant you pick. And based on what we've seen on this, those are real numbers. And I think Zip is a great choice between range and performance. Very, very nicely done. I can see it making you happy, and I can see family members 2 decades your senior just as satisfied. The other mode is Smart Eco, which mostly is normal. But if you're riding slowly or the battery's kind of low, Smart Eco can lose most of its intelligence and become dumb eco, which does sound harsh. But we get to pull Ather's legs so little, I'm going to make the most of this. In slow traffic, Smart Eco has just enough performance. Keeping up with traffic, overtaking a few things, no stress. And you'll see between 100 to 125 kilometers of range in the real world, depending on which battery pack you've chosen. Fine. But when you're faced with a flyover, or you live in a town with sloped roads, you'd better be prepared for 2 things. One, have a lot of charge left and be prepared to open the throttle a lot, or switch to zip mode, which is what I ended up doing. The Rizta doesn't die valiantly on the slopes of battle. It just comes close. It climbs slowly and it's losing speed the entire time until it hits some residual speed above 10 kilometers an hour. And then that's how it crawls the rest of the way uphill. It's really tiresome. That achieves a few things. One, on the same riding cycle as a 450X, this scooter returned consistently 15 to 18 kilometers more range, so all of this does work. But the flip side of that is this scooter can be so tiresome to ride in some situations that easily this is the most boring thing Ather makes. Okay, let's move on. How do you charge these things? The smaller Rizta models get a 350 watt charger that takes about 9 hours to get it from 0 to 100%. If you buy this, the 3.7 kilowatt hour battery, then you get the 700 watt charger, which needs about 6 hours to do the same job. All of the 3 Riztas can be fast charge. Expect about an hour to get to 80% on the grid network, paying about ₹1 per minute of charging. Easy. And there is a charging accessory that I think you absolutely should get, which is the wall mount for their Duo charger. This means you can have the charger wall mounted and then take it out of the mount and put it under the seat if you need to, without having to acquire 2 of them. And this is important because if you do carry that charger around, it consumes nearly half the space under the seat. So how will the Rizta be to live with? Well, I think it should be much simpler than living with an Ola. But I suppose living without a scooter would be simpler than living with an Ola, so we haven't actually achieved much. Let me rephrase. How will the Rizta be to live with? I think it should be pretty simple. What we expect to see ultimately is 2 services a year, one mostly for diagnostics and inspections, and the other for that and consumables and wear and tear parts, and that's it. And this Rizta now has these impressively huge plastic shrouds at the bottom, which should solve some of the known issues like the squeaky belts once filth gets into them. And overall, Ather's service reputation is pretty decent. The warranty coverage is also decent. All versions of the Rizta get a standard 3-year 30,000 kilometer warranty that covers vehicle, charger, and the battery. If you add Pro Pack, you get another 2 years and 30,000 kilometers of coverage for the battery, and the battery cover at Ather is very comprehensive. What is less clear is what happens after Pro Pack. The first 3 years connectivity is free. What happens after that has never been explained. When I asked Tarun, Ather's CEO, he said, shouldn't be more than $1,000 a year. Surely 6 years after you started selling scooters, we can get a closed-ended answer, right? It's important because connectivity defines all of the software features. Without it, you don't get riding modes. You don't get the useful but slightly glitchy hill hold function. You don't get magic twist, which on the scooter I have enjoyed using, but by now I thought it would be natural to me and it's not, which means more calibration work still needs to be done. So is the Pro Pack worth buying? Yes, I think it is. But will a Rizta be completely useless if you opted out? Not at all. Which brings us to the question, which Rizta should you buy? The sensible choice is the base Ather Rizta S with the 2.9 kilowatt hour battery. There is no emotional choice here. And what you trade in if you do that is 10 to 15 kilometers of range and the color screen, more or less. That's it. And you'd save 44,000 rupees from the top model, give or take. That's a huge saving. And if you get the S, your family can't really chase you down using WhatsApp on your scooter screen. And to me, that's priceless. So why would you buy the Rizta X 3.7 at all? I suppose your commute is really long and every single kilometer of range makes a difference. Or you're just dying of range anxiety. What about the rivals? You have Chetak, iQube, the Olas. And I wish honestly that answer was a lot clearer. Because the Rizta is a good scooter, but a groundbreaking family electric scooter, it's not. Ownership experience versus the Ola, this is definitely going to be better, but honestly, that's not saying much. The TVS will match the Rizta for space, feel slightly more comfortable and also a little bit slower. The Chetak is very affordable, it has similar range now, but performance, space, it's not that close. And honestly, that leaves the River Indy, which might be the most interesting of this entire bunch of scooters. But that network is so small, it's not going to make a dent. What about the ICEs, whose age is apparently ending, but at an unexpectedly glacial pace? Well, I think the Access 125 and the Jupiter 110 remain the most effective family scooters today. They are cheaper to acquire, they are useful, they are predictable, they are comfortable, they do all of their jobs well, and both of these scooters specifically, they have a clear sense of personality which none of the electrics, maybe apart from the Indy, have. The only exception to that is the Ather 450X, and that's not a family scooter. And that brings us back to the Rizta, which is a distinctly odd Ather. It does have some of those cool features we associate with this brand. It does have some of those solutions that when Ather deploys, in hindsight, they seem obvious and like everybody should just do it. But it lacks that unique feel and persona that we've seen in all the Athers, and I think that's a bit of a miss. The Rizta will keep the scoreboard moving for Ather, but honestly, I was hoping for a lot more here to cheer for. A clean, hard hit into the stands. That it is not.